What if the strongest force shaping the human mind isn't technology, money, or politics, but ritualized belief enforced through daily structure? Most men assume freedom comes from removing constraints. Fewer rules, fewer obligations, more choice. But that assumption collapses the moment you study any system that reliably forges disciplined men across centuries. The uncomfortable truth is this: structure doesn't weaken the mind, it organizes it, and the more complete the structure, the deeper the psychological grip. Here is a thesis, stated calmly. Systems that bind belief to daily action gain power over the human mind, not through fear, but through repetition, identity, and certainty. When belief becomes embodied practice, it stops being an idea and becomes gravity. Observe reality instead of arguing ideology. Men across cultures, generations, and environments converge towards systems that reduce chaos because the alternative is fragmentation. A man without structure improvises his values daily. That is exhausting. Eventually, he surrenders to something that decides for him. Every man you respect submits to a code. Quietly, the myth says modern men are driven by freedom and self-expression. That myth collapses under pressure. When life tightens, men don't look for more options. They look for firmer rules, not motivation, but structure, not inspiration, but command, not endless choice, but a narrow path walked well. Watch what happens when belief is reduced to opinion. It dissolves the moment it becomes inconvenient. But when belief is welded to time, posture, language, and daily behavior, it survives friction. That is where its power originates, not in argument, in rhythm. There is invisible work here that most observers miss. Waking at fixed hours, repeating words that have survived generations, aligning the body before aligning the mind, submitting ego to sequence. The cost is constant. The reward is coherence. This is not emotional comfort. It is psychological order. Minimal truth. No drama. Repetition rewires attention. Here is the law. Attention shapes beneath all belief systems that endure. Preparation meets opportunity only when preparation is enforced, not optional. Men who train only when motivated never meet opportunity prepared. Men who train because the structure demands it arrive ready by default, not chasing inspiration. Same hour, same movements, same standard. Over time, the body adapts, the mind follows. Or consider leadership. A man who decides values in advance doesn't negotiate with himself under pressure. He executes. Pressure doesn't create the pattern, it reveals it. Ask yourself why that matters. Pressure strips performance down to training. When plans collapse, you fall back on identity. When identity is vague, behavior becomes chaotic. When identity is defined, behavior becomes automatic. That automation is not weakness, it is efficiency. Focus is territory. Whatever occupies, it governs you. Scatter it, and you are governed by everything. Guard it, and you choose what shapes you. Systems that survive understand this. They claim attention at fixed intervals. They do not ask permission to check their phones impulsively. Men who are anchored return to the same mental posture daily. Guarded focus compounds. Scattered focus decays. There is a growth sequence that cannot be bypassed. Learn, apply, evaluate, correct, persist. Not once, cyclically, again and again. Systems that endure hard-code this loop into daily life so men don't rely on memory or mood. The rhythm carries them when willpower fades. Motivation is emotional weather. Discipline is climate. One changes hourly, the other shapes decades. The mind respects what is non-negotiable. When everything is optional, nothing is sacred. Daily law. Show up regardless of feeling. Daily law. Execute before explaining. Now slow down. Strategic patience is misunderstood. It is not waiting. It is building quietly while time does the heavy lifting. Compounding favors those who repeat the same behavior. Long accumulation never allow momentum to mature. Systems that emphasize patience produce men who can sit inside repetition without panic. Here is the paradox that resets attention. The more constraints you accept voluntarily, the freer your mind becomes. Chaos demands constant decision-making. Structure removes it. Energy once spent negotiating with yourself becomes available for execution. Identity is the final integration. You don't perform discipline. You become a disciplined man. You don't visit structure. You live inside it. Belief stops being something you defend and becomes something you inhabit. This is not about adopting any label. It is about recognizing the mechanics of mental power. Systems that bind belief to daily action shape men more effectively than any abstract philosophy. They operate whether you approve of them or not. Now live as if it's already true, because once you see the mechanism, not drift toward truth, it drifts toward relief. Relief from uncertainty, relief from choice, relief from internal debate. Any system that reliably reduces that burden gains leverage, not through force, but through clarity. Clarity feels like safety to a nervous system overloaded by modern noise. Men today are not weak. They are overstimulated. Too many inputs, too many options, too many half-beliefs competing for dominance. The result is not freedom. It is paralysis masked as independence. A man scrolling endlessly is not choosing. Why belief systems tied to strict daily structure retain power even in hyper-modern environments. They do not compete in the marketplace of ideas. They operate outside it. They claim time, posture, language, and attention before doubt enters the room. Ask yourself why that matters. Because the mind believes what the body rehearses. Thought follows action far more often than action follows thought. Repeated behavior long enough, and the brain constructs justification after the fact. This is not theory. This is pattern. Identity is often retrofitted to routine. Stop. Think. Most men attempt to think their way into discipline. That is backward. Discipline is a physical agreement with the future. When the body moves on schedule, the mind aligns out of necessity. Systems that understand this start with action, not debate. Notice how fragile modern belief is. It requires constant validation, constant contact, and the belief weakens. Contrast that with belief reinforced through embodied practice. No comment section required, no approval sought. The reinforcement loop is internal. This is where power consolidates. Not power over others, power over self. And self-control is the rarest currency in a distracted age. Pressure always reveals patterns. Under stress, men do not rise to their ideals. They sink to their training. A man who trains sporadically becomes sporadic under pressure. A man who trains ritually becomes stable under chaos. Consider moments when fatigue sets in, late nights, financial strain, social isolation. The man without structure negotiates. The man with structure executes. One burns energy deciding. The other conserves energy acting. Every decision carries cognitive cost. Systems that remove decision points preserve mental bandwidth. That bandwidth ask yourself directed towards survival, leadership, or mastery. This is not accidental. It is engineered. Ask yourself why that matters. Because modern life taxes decision-making relentlessly. What to wear, what to eat, what to believe, what to ignore. Men who never reduce options eventually surrender to impulse. Men who pre-commit to structure remain sovereign. Focus, again, is territory. Attention claimed at dawn shapes the entire day. Attention claimed at night determines sleep quality and mental recovery. Systems that bookend the day with structure control the frame through which reality is processed. Stop. Think. Scattered focus feels like freedom in the moment. Guarded focus feels restrictive at first. But over time, guarded focus compounds into clarity. Clarity compounds into confidence. Confidence compounds into authority. Authority begins internally before it ever recognized externally. Learn, apply, evaluate, correct, persist. Systems that endure do not rely on inspiration to restart this loop. The loop is embedded into time itself. Miss a day, and the absence is felt. That friction pulls the man back into alignment. This is why loosely held beliefs evaporate under stress. There is no friction pulling the man back, no cost to drifting, no resistance to decay. Discipline always beats motivation because discipline is pre-decided. Motivation negotiates. Discipline executes. Motivation asks how you feel. Discipline asks what time it is. Daily law. Time over mood. Daily law. Action before explanation. Now slow the pace. Strategic patience requires faith in process without constant feedback. That is increasingly rare. Men raised on instant metrics struggle with delayed reward. Systems that emphasize patience inoculate men against this weakness. They train the nervous system to tolerate repetition without visible progress. Because men who require constant confirmation are easy to manipulate. Men who are internally anchored are difficult to sway. They are not rigid. They are rooted. Roots allow flexibility without collapse. Here is another paradox. The stricter the personal code, the less energy wasted on self-policing. When standards are clear, enforcement becomes automatic. Ambiguity breeds internal conflict. Clarity dissolves it. This is where identity locks in. You stop asking whether you feel like doing the work. You ask whether the work aligns with who you are. The question answers itself. Identity makes behavior efficient. Notice the absence of spectacle. No hype, no emotional peaks. Just steady alignment. This steadiness is often misread as suppression. It is not. It is channeling. Energy moves in a single direction instead of leaking everywhere. Men who live this way are not louder because it is consistent. Others sense the absence of internal chaos. Pressure again reveals patterns. When chaos enters the room, some men accelerate. Others freeze. Acceleration without structure leads to burnout. Freezing without structure leads to collapse. Structure allows calibrated response. Stop. Think. Modern masculinity often confuses aggression with strength. Aggression is uncontrolled output. Strength is regulated force. Systems that emphasize restraint over expression produce men capable of controlled intensity. This is why restraint is misunderstood. It is not weakness, it is stored energy. The man who can wait can also strike precisely when required. Return to focus is territory. Every notification is a border breach. Every unexamined impulse is a concession. Over time, concessions accumulate. Territory shrinks. Authority weakens. Men who reclaim focus do so through ritualized boundaries, fixed hours. Not because they are inflexible, but because flexibility without foundation is drift. Ask yourself why that matters. Because leadership begins with self-command. A man who cannot command his attention cannot command outcomes. A man who cannot command outcomes will eventually submit to circumstance. Now integrate the sequence again. Learn, apply, evaluate. Correct. Persist. Notice how persistence is last, not first. Persistence without correction is stubbornness. Correction without persistence is instability. Systems that endure balance both. Daily law. Review without emotion. Daily law. Adjust without ego. Time asymmetry favors those who start early and stay consistent. Small advantages compounded quietly outperform dramatic efforts abandoned early. This is true in training, in skill, in belief, in identity. Late video truth. Counterintuitive but accurate. The mind is not held more firmly. Excess input dilutes conviction. Narrow focus deepens it. Men searching endlessly for the perfect framework avoid committing to any. Commitment feels risky, but avoidance guarantees mediocrity. Progress requires choosing a structure and submitting to it long enough to be shaped. This does not mean blind acceptance. It means disciplined engagement. Evaluate internally. Adjust privately, persist publicly. Identity integration is the final step. You do not borrow discipline from a system. You internalize the mechanics and become self-regulating. At that point, the structure lives inside you. External reminders become unnecessary. You are no longer motivated. You are oriented. Orientation outlasts emotion. Orientation survives fatigue. Orientation stabilizes under stress. This is the quiet power most men sense but cannot articulate. The power of a mind that knows where it stands, what it does daily, and what it refuses to do. Structure creates rhythm. Rhythm creates identity. Identity governs behavior under pressure. You do not do discipline. You become it. Now live as if it's already true. Before you leave, hold one final question in your mind. If your routines were stripped away tomorrow, if your schedule collapsed, if no one watched, praised, or corrected you, what would remain? Would your behavior still reflect order? Or would it drift? Here is the answer, stated plainly. Whatever remains when structure is removed is who you actually are, not who you intend to be. Not who you speak about becoming, but who you have trained yourself to default into. That is the real audit. And here is the deeper question, though, not you chose deliberately or inside habits you inherited accidentally. Ask yourself why that matters. Because the mind always serves a structure. If you do not design it, one will be assigned to you by convenience, by impulse, by the loudest signal in the room. Now answer this honestly, without performance. What single daily structure, if made non-negotiable, would change the trajectory of your next 5 years? Do not overthink it. You already know. Put that answer in the comments. Not for validation, for commitment. When you write it, you make it real. When you make it public more clearly, not emotionally clearly, then stay connected. Subscribe, not for entertainment, for calibration. Return to this channel when you need to realign, not when you need motivation. And remember this final line: you do not rise to what you believe. You fall to what you practice. Now live as tomorrow. How long would your discipline survive hours or minutes? Modern men think freedom means fewer rules. The men who actually win live by the strictest ones.